Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dr. Farkas, you have stated publicly that your support for defensive legal assistance in the Ukraine was not supported within the Department of Defense. How should the committee assess the department's request to increase resources to deter Russia? Can you discuss the divergent views with the department and the administration on U.S. policy towards Russia?
Thank you, Congressman, for your question. I think, as I mentioned in my written testimony and in my oral statement, that the countries around Russia's periphery, they have requested lethal defensive equipment, specifically anti-tank weapons, the Javelin system. And thus far, the administration has not seen the need to provide this equipment to those countries, but I believe that it would be an important potential deterrent to Russia. And again, because it's defensive in nature, I don't believe that it would cause some kind of escalation dynamic that would be uncontrollable and lead to the United States getting drawn into the conflict in Ukraine. So I do believe strongly that we should make that system available to those countries. As far as the discussion about the Russia threat, I think you are hearing a chorus of voices, starting with, as I mentioned earlier, Secretary Carter talking about the Russia threat, as well as Deputy Secretary Work, who has really rolled up his sleeves and has been actively pushing items in the budget for a while now to address the Russia threat. So I think you're hearing one strong voice coming out of the Department of Defense and the administration writ large. But it's not the voice that matters, and in fact, sometimes if you talk too loudly, your strategy can backfire. It's more important what we do, and that's why I talked about across the board. We don't need to get into a confrontational dynamic with Russia, and indeed, there are places where we need to talk to Russia. And I don't want to veer too far off your question topic, but on the strategic and some of the more dangerous elements of our relationship, we actually have to re-engage in a discussion.
Okay, so Dr. Farkas, again, what lessons has the conflict in Ukraine taught us about our own shortfalls, and how would providing Ukraine with defensive legal assistance, you mentioned the Javelin, change the playing field on the ground in eastern Ukraine?
Well, I think, Congressman, we covered a lot of the ways that we've learned. You know, we were quite shocked, first of all, on the diplomatic front, that the Russian government took the fact that the Ukraine was interested in joining the European Union as such an assault on their foreign policy, and that they reacted the way that they did, that they took the opportunity of, the failed arrangement where the Yanukovych, the former president of Ukraine, fled, and they took that opportunity to go in and seize Crimea. I think the thing that hasn't been mentioned, or maybe not mentioned sufficiently, is intelligence. And again, I think I want to elaborate a little bit on what Dr. Hill said. I found it shocking in the administration. I mean, it wasn't shocking, but it was disappointing. We have actually a lot of very good intelligence on Russia, but we do not have sufficient analysts. We do not have sufficient resources to get that information processed and get it out to the policymakers fast enough. And so I really believe that we need more analysts on the case. The other thing that we found was the lack of ISR. I mean, this is obviously this committee is dealing with that issue all the time in many different contexts, but we need more ISR for the U.S. European Command. Every interagency meeting we were in, when we talked about what can we do, there was always this discussion of, well, what's going on? And, you know, the satellite capability is one thing, but we really need to have the eyes on all the time. And so that's an area where I do believe we need to make sure that we have sufficient resources. And of course, we could provide those resources to the Ukrainians as well.
Okay, Dr. Hill, is it fair to suggest that President Putin expects that the West will turn a blind eye to Russian aggression and continue to cooperate with Russia? And what do our allies and partners in the region need from the United States?
I think that President Putin certainly did think that there was a strong possibility that we might turn a blind eye. This was one of his lessons that he took away from Georgia. He took the lack of a robust response to this as a sign that we weren't really serious. All of the questions that we're talking about today from our own perspective are questions that are being asked in Moscow about their own perspective in terms of analysis and intelligence and their posture, all aimed against deterring us. Putin has been seeking to exploit as many fishes as possible between us and our allies. And this is one area where I have something of a slight disagreement with Dr. Farkas about we have to be very careful when we're discussing support for Ukraine and elsewhere about keeping unity with our European allies. This is really a very key element about changing those expectations that we will get back to business as usual with Russia.
Okay, my time is up, Mr. Chair. Thank you. Thank you very much.